Have you ever been curious about yawning? It's one of those things that we all do, but nobody really knows exactly why. Well, today you're gonna find out because in this episode of Sleepy Science, Yoni the Yawn Fairy is here to help you learn all about yawning. Let's dive right in. Hi, welcome to Sleepy Science. I'm your host. Today we are going to be exploring the question, why do we yawn? This question has puzzled scientists and philosophers for centuries. But there are some pretty solid theories out there as to why we do it. When you start to get tired, like your eyelids get droopy and you just feel kind of sluggish and slow. Your brain starts to heat up. Scientists have found that a quick yawn can help cool down your brain and wake yourself up. And then when you see someone else yawning, your brain does something called empathy. That means that you can put yourself in their shoes and understand how they feel. So when you see someone yawn, your brain knows that they are tired, so it gets ready to be tired too, which is why you yawn when you see someone else yawn. But let's explore these ideas a little bit more deeply with a couple of experiments. Have you ever noticed that if you yawn a few times, you usually don't need to do anything else to wake yourself up? Like you do need to splash water on your face or jump around the room or anything like that. You just yawn a few times and then you're wide awake and ready to go. Well, that's because yawning helps your body move blood from your sleeping brain to your active muscles. And once that blood gets there, it wakes up your brain. In fact, scientists have actually studied what happens to your brain when you yawn. They took a bunch of volunteers and had them yawn while they were getting an MRI. An MRI is a machine that lets scientists see inside your brain without cutting it open. Basically, it uses magnets and radio waves to take pictures of your brain. So scientists could look at the brains of these volunteers as they yawned. What they found was that the parts of the brain that control movement were lighting up like a Christmas tree. This tells us that yawning isn't just some idle nothing thing that we do. It's a very purposeful thing that our brains do to keep us healthy and happy. Speaking of yawning, have you ever noticed that yawning is kind of contagious? Like if you're hanging out with a friend and they yawn, you might yawn too. Well, it turns out that yawning is contagious because humans are social creatures. When you see someone else yawn, your brain automatically puts itself in yawning mode. Now that doesn't mean that you have to yawn. You can choose not to. But your brain is basically getting ready to yawn if you want to. Now scientists are still trying to figure out exactly how yawning is related to being social. For instance, you can see a picture of someone yawning and you might yawn. Or you can just hear about someone yawning and you might yawn. And since you can't see or hear someone when you're reading a book, scientists think that yawning is probably related to other things besides social cues. Like maybe the sound that the person makes when they yawn. One scientist named Andrew Gallup has studied the sound that people make when they yawn. He's even recorded the sounds people make when they yawn. And here is a compilation of people yawning. Can you listen and count how many different kinds of yawning sounds you hear? Well, now he is analyzing the sounds people make when they yawn. He has found that most people tend to do one of three sounds: a small snort, a large snort, or a small yawn. And these sounds might be related to the size of your yawn. So in order to test this idea, Andrew Gallup and his team asked people to rate their yawns from 1 to 4, where 1 is the smallest yawn possible and 4 is the biggest yawn possible. Then they played the recordings back to themselves and rated the size of the yawn based on the sound that they heard. And they found that there was a correlation between the size of the yawn and the sound that was made. Small yawns were usually a small snort or a small yawn sound, while big yawns were a large snort or a big yawn sound. Of course, we all love a good cartoon, but did you know that cartoons might teach you stuff? A company did some research and found that kids who learn something from a cartoon show can remember that learning long term. And that's why, and now back to our sleepy science. You know, yawning is kind of gross, right? Like it's really uncomfortable and you can't control it. So it must be pretty awful to live in a world where everyone around you is constantly yawning. But don't worry, because the rare condition known as volitional hyper-yawning could be a sign of something much more. Maybe you're a time traveler visiting the future where everyone is just super tired of living in the future. That's called chrono shift. People are so exhausted living in the future that they just constantly yawn. It's a future version of burnout. But don't worry, if you catch chrono shift, the cure is easy. Just watch this episode of Sleepy Science to get back to normal. Well, maybe you're not a time traveler, but maybe you're a superhero with the power to read minds. That's called telepathy. And the reason why everyone's yawning is because they're all thinking about taking a nap. Telepaths can be mental sponges, soaking up everyone else's thoughts and feelings. And when you absorb too much, you get mental exhaustion. Luckily, though, if you get telepathic mental exhaustion, the cure is easy. Just watch this episode of Sleepy Science to recharge your powers. Well, maybe you aren't a time traveler or a superhero, but maybe you just have a stuffy nose. That's called congestion. When your nasal passages are all stuffy, it's hard to breathe through your nose. So instead, your body moves air through the front of your mouth, which creates negative pressure in your throat. And your brain detects that negative pressure and thinks that you're choking, so it tells you to yawn in order to save you from choking. If you have a cold, it can make you yawn a lot. But luckily, there is a cure for the common cold. So check out this episode of Sleepy Science to learn about colds. Okay, now it's time to do an experiment. Do you think that yawning will make you feel less sleepy? Or do you think that yawning will make you feel more sleepy? Well, let's try it out. Okay, now stay awake and try not to fall asleep. It's gonna be so easy. Now let's count backwards from 20. 20, 19, 18. Alright, if you're still awake, let's take a big deep breath. Hold it down now. Let's slowly release the breath and yawn. Did that help you feel less sleepy? If you're still awake, congratulations. But if you fell asleep, well, don't worry because there's always next time. Yawning is a fascinating topic and scientists are still learning about it. Hopefully, this episode of Sleepy Science has helped you learn something new about yawning. If you want to continue learning about sleep, check out the rest of the series. You can also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hey, thanks for watching. See you next time.